We all like to see people who are the best at what they do. But there's something special about seeing your idol be weak and human 1 minute and then successful the next. Hollywood will never be able to copy the raw emotion of a comeback in the middle of a fight. Some fights are just wow because of the unexpected and unpredictable comebacks. So, without further ado, here are the top 10 greatest comebacks in MMA. Number 10. Clay Guida vs. Roger Huerta, The Ultimate Fighter 6 finale. Roger Huerta, who was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, fought Clay Guida, who was a fan favorite in the main event of The Ultimate Fighter Season 6's last episode. Guida won the first round with his wrestling, and in the second, he shocked Huerta with a right hand. Huerta, who had lost the first 2 rounds, came out for the third round swinging like a madman and throwing a lot of punches. Guida was so tired that he tried a head kick but was knocked down. El Matador jumped on Guida, who was confused, and put him to sleep with a rear naked choke in just 31 seconds of the third round, when he could smell blood. Number 9. Cung Le vs. Scott Smith, Strikeforce Evolution. Scott Smith, the MMA comeback kid, would not be on a list of people who would have made a comeback. He came back strong against Cung Le, who used to be the middleweight champion of Strikeforce and is now an actor and a part-time fighter. Lee, a flashy Sangshu fighter, won the first round by knocking Smith down twice with head kicks and almost putting him out of the fight. In the second frame, the attack kept going, and Lee kept landing kicks. In round 3, Smith's strong hands would strike. Smith won when he hit Lee with a left hook that knocked him out and surrounded San Jose's favorite son. This was Scott Smith's third victory in which he came from behind to win. Number 8. Tim Sylvia vs. Andrei Arlovski, UFC 59. In 2005, the UFC heavyweight division was a small pond with a few big fish. Andrei Arlovski and Tim Sylvia were 2 of those big fish. Arlovski was the UFC's heavyweight champion at the time, and the word interim was just taken off of his title. He crushed his weaker opponents like a freight train. At the time, the only possible fight was a rematch with Tim Sylvia, who had been the champion before. In what looked like a repeat of their first fight, Arlovski knocked Sylvia out early in the first round with a big right hand. Big Tim, on the other hand, was able to get up and hit the champion's weak chin with a short uppercut, which knocked him flat on his face. Sylvia beat Arlovski with punches on the ground to win back the UFC heavyweight title. Because they've worked together so much, it's only fair that these 2 are on my list. Before Fedor beat them, both had been UFC heavyweight champions and UFC interim heavyweight champions. They also both led Affliction pay-per-views before Fedor beat them. I detect a transition. Number 7. In a boxing match, Fedor Emelianenko faces Kazuyuki Fujita, Pride 26. Fedor Emelianenko has always been able to get through hard times. At Pride 26, heavyweight Kazuyuki Fujita's crazy right hook early in the first round almost shocked the MMA world. The punch hit Emelianenko in the head, hurting him and making him lose his balance. Fedor was able to hold on after Fujita took the fight to the ground by accident, which gave Emelianenko a chance to get back up. Emelianenko knocked Fujita down and finished the fight with a brutal rear naked choke while he was still hurt. Fedor made a name for himself when he beat Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira for the Pride heavyweight title, but it was this fight that won over Japanese fans. Number 6. UFC 81, Tim Sylvia vs. Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira. Heavyweight champion Randy Couture was in a legal battle with the UFC, so former UFC heavyweight champion Tim Sylvia fought former Pride heavyweight champion Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira for another UFC interim heavyweight title. Sylvia was able to keep the fight going and hurt Nogueira when they were both on the ground. Nogueira was knocked out in the first round, and in the second, he was already hit. At the start of the third round, it looked like Big Tim was going to keep picking apart the Brazilian. However, the submission dynamo had other plans. After taking another right hand, Nogueira was able to move into half guard and sweep his bigger opponent. When Sylvia tried to get up at 128 of the third round, Minotauro put him in a deep guillotine choke and made him tap. Number 5. Matt Serra vs. Shoney Carter, UFC 31. The terror by Matt before he shocked George St. Pierre and won the welterweight title, Serra was a rising lightweight. With a Renzo Gracie black belt, Serra never lost a match. He submitted all 4 of his opponents. Sarah's first fight in the UFC was at UFC 31 against Shoni Carter, who was smart and funny. With 10 seconds left, when Mr. International missed a lazy high kick and came back with a spinning back punch, it looked like Sarah was about to make a very practical choice. The punch knocked Sarah out, giving Carter his 19th professional win. If not for double knockout, this would be the most famous thing about Shoni Carter. But that's a different story. Number 4. Cro Cop vs. Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira. Pride Final Conflict 2003. Fedor Emelianenko was the heavyweight champion, but he couldn't fight because he was hurt, so Pride chose to name an interim champion. You may see a pattern forming at this point. So a fight between Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira, a former champion, and Mirko Cro Cop Filipovic, a former K1 star, was set up. Cro Cop was an MMA fighter who never lost a match. He left people with broken bones and was knocked out. In the first 10 minutes of his fight with Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira, he was a real scary guy. Cro Cop kicked Minotauro in the body and hit him in the face, which made Nogueira's ground game useless. In the last second of the first round, Cro Cop's famous left high kick sent his opponent to the ground, but the tough Brazilian would get through. In the second round, Nogueira got a takedown after getting some rest. When Mirko tried to throw Nogueira, the black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu grabbed one of his arms and won another submission from behind. Number 3. Brock Lesnar vs. Shane Carwin. UFC 116. Brock Lesnar, the UFC heavyweight champion, will fight Shane Carwin, who is just as big, in the best MMA event of 2010. Fedor had just lost a fight a week before, so the top heavyweight spot was in danger. Brock was beaten up on his feet by the strong challenger after Brock failed to take him down in the first round. The champion was backing up against the fence when Carwin knocked him down and beat him while he was on the ground. The fight was almost stopped, but even though Lesnar was hurt and weak, he was able to keep going. Brock got up, and for the rest of the round he pushed Carwin against the fence. At the start of the second round, a tired Carwin was finally taken down by Lesnar. At 2:19 of the second round, the former WWE star put on an arm triangle choke that made the opponent tap out. Lesnar came out of this fight as a humble champion, who had finally shown his strength in the MMA ring. Brock doesn't know where his career will go from here, but his come-from-behind win put him in the same room as some of the best heavyweights in MMA. Number 2. Scott Smith vs. Pete Sell. The Ultimate Fighter 4 finale. Without the match between Scott Smith and Pete Sell, no list of comebacks would be full. The end of this fight could have easily been used in a Rocky movie. Well, not Rocky V, because that was terrible. Scott Smith and Pete Sell went back and forth in a thrilling fight for a round and a half. With more than 3 minutes left in the third round, Sell hits Smith with a powerful left hook to the body. Smith falls backwards and clutches his ribs as he stumbles towards the cage. Sell went for the knockout when his opponent was badly hurt and didn't look like he could defend himself. Smith's right hand stopped him. After Sell was knocked out, the fight was stopped. During the break, Smith fell to the ground. Both the winner and the loser were lying down in the octagon. It was quite a sight. As was already said, Scott Smith would go on to score 2 more come-from-behind knockouts, but none as shocking as this one. Number 1. Frank Trigg vs. Matt Hughes. UFC 52. I chose this fight as my top priority for a number of reasons. This was the UFC's first pay-per-view event after the first season of The Ultimate Fighter. Before their second fight for the UFC welterweight title, Matt Hughes and Frank Trigg didn't get along. This was mostly due to the large amount of trash talk by Frank Trigg. Hughes was hurt when Trigg punched him below the belt early in the first round. Trigg ran up to Hughes and knocked him down, but the referee didn't see it. Trigg kept beating Hughes off the horse until he was finally caught. When Trigg got there, he said he would do a rear naked choke. It would have been poetic for Frank Trigg to kill his enemy the same way he lost to him the first time, but it wasn't meant to be. Hughes was able to fight off the attempt to take him down and get back up onto his feet. When Hughes got there, he grabbed the person who was going to challenge him and ran him across the ring for a slam. Hughes did some ground and pound on his opponent before putting him in another rear naked choke. Trigg gave up, ending the biggest comeback in the history of MMA. Thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for more.